very much, Governor Winter. Katrina was probably the best thing that has ever happened to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Now, you're going to think I'm crazy for saying that. I'm up here to give an introduction of our First Lady and our Governor, but those two need no introduction, so I'm going to use this time for more of a presentation before they come. Why do I say that? I can't excuse the lives that were lost. I can't explain all the damage that we had. I can't rationalize all those things. A higher body knows about those kinds of things. But I can say this, that the people whose lives were touched in so many ways are better off because of Katrina. And I see some nodding heads here of people who were in the water and in the wind of that storm. Why? Because we had to step back from life and realize that we had taken a lot of things for granted that are just stuff in our lives as opposed to the relationships that are important in life. And Katrina brought those relationships back, not only from the people who were there during the storm, but also from the hundreds of thousands of people who came and embraced us in the recovery of that storm. For only one reason, and that was love a fellow man. For neighbors who got to know each other better. For children who learned a different value on the things that we sometimes take for granted in our lives. Again, I can't explain the storms. That's left to a higher body. But the good Lord knows what he's doing. And he brings us great things when we need them most. And sometimes he knocks us down so we have to stand back up again and realize what's really important in life. But one of the things that he did, and I firmly believe this, that he put Haley and Marcia in our state government at a time that we could have the leadership that they gave to deal with and recover from Katrina. That was amazing. When you have a calamity like that, and it doesn't just affect the people who are on the beach. As Ken Papu said, it took the roof off of this building. That's not the first time that happened. 96 years before, in 1909, a hurricane took the roof off of this building. Those hurricanes have a tendency to come on shore, and many of the counties in the state experience those hurricane winds. So a lot of you who were not on the coast know what I'm talking about when we say we had a major disaster, the worst in American history. But what happens after is the test. And what happened after that storm showed that the most important thing that you can have is a leader. A leader. Not just somebody to glad hand and make speeches, but a leader who can inspire the public to realize that there's going to be a better day yet to come back. And how do you coordinate 12,000 people coming in electric utility vans to turn the power back on? Do you realize what it takes to house and to feed and accommodate 12,000 visitors who come in just to climb power poles so they can turn the lights back on? Haley Barbour did that. How do you accommodate the hundreds of thousands of people who want to come in here because they want to help? And how do they help? In so many, many ways. But coming to help creates a lot of turmoil, quite frankly. Those people need to be housed and fed and so forth. How about the young students of all ages, but mostly young college students who came in by the thousands? Well, what do you do with them? There's no place to eat, there's no place to sleep, there's no place for washing and so forth. But a governor like Haley Barbour was able to coordinate that so that all of us who were working could lean one on the other and make accommodations for those kinds of people. One group was a Jewish group that came from out of state. We made beds in the Presbyterian church on the long pews, and that's where those kids slept for the weeks after the storm that they were helping people dig out of the debris. But the coordination for those kinds of things is what our governor gave us. But most of all, he gave us spirit by his presence, by bringing in the federal government, the state government, the first responders, and giving them the hope and the knowledge that they were doing the right thing at the right time and safeguarding their lives while they were operating in terrible conditions. And Haley Barbour was that leader. His hand was there the whole time. And it wasn't just Haley. For the 3 months following the storm, Marsha Barbour was on the scene, on the Gulf Coast for 70 different days. 70 different days. And we had problems in a lot of places. Now, you didn't see much about what Marsha was doing because it wasn't for publicity. It wasn't for politics. She was working one-on-one with families who needed help. And that's in the book that they've written for us. The experiences that they had of helping people who could not help themselves. That's what a hurricane's all about. And again, I don't know how the good Lord works, but he knows what he's doing. And he certainly knew what he was doing when he gave us Marsha and Haley Barbour as our governor during those stressful times. It's my honor to present the governor at this time with a few words from him. Governor.
What they say about politicians is they say don't applaud, it only encourages. But I'm going to try to make a speech as appropriately the right length and not as much as that applause would normally require, which has been most of the afternoon. George, thank you. Governor, thank you very much for being here. And Ken, Chris, and those of y'all with Archives of History, thank you for inviting me to be here and to talk about something I think is very important for us to talk about. You know, I can't tell you how many times in the days, weeks, months after the storm, our fellow Mississippians would come to me and complain about the news media. None of the coverage is ever about Mississippi. It's always about this happened in New Orleans and that happened in New Orleans. And I tried to remind them. The news media doesn't like to cover airplanes that land safely. And there wasn't a lot of terrible stuff happening in Mississippi. In fact, there's a lot of good stuff happening in Mississippi, and some of the people who are responsible for that are here in this room. And I wrote this book with the hopes that it would give some attention to primarily two huge groups of people. One, the strong, resilient, self-reliant people in Mississippi. People who got knocked down flat by the worst natural disaster in American history. And we did bear the brunt of the worst natural disaster in American history. And yet, our people got right back up and hitched up their britches and went to work. And I think very importantly and underreported, they went back to work not just to help themselves, but to help their neighbors. They went back to work because they were committed to rebuilding their communities. George wasn't mayor when the storm hit. He was a humble banker of today the largest bank in the state. But George will remember very well that the real crisis in my mind, after search and rescue and security and kind of maintaining civil order, which by the way was never lost in any community on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, which is a credit to our first responders. It's a credit to our local officials. But it was clear to me in the first week, it is not going to be easy to get people to come back and rebuild their communities because this was utter obliteration. I can't tell you how many people from the coast told me I couldn't find where my house had been because the coast was covered in debris. You not only had this destruction that's unbelievable, so much that we coined a new verb on the coast after Katrina. The verb was slab. I was slab, meaning there was nothing left of my house but a slab. And there were probably 20 or 25,000 homes on the coast that fit that description. And we can't remember, can't help but remember, this wasn't just a coastal calamity. We had hurricane force winds almost as far north as Columbus to start, which were declared major disaster areas by the government. Hurricane force winds north of Meridian, fatalities where we had dozens of fatalities weren't on the coast. They were had one fatality right here in Jackson. Ken made the point about the damage done to this historic old building. Well, the damage was just very, very powerful and significant 150 miles inland. It wasn't just on the coast. But on the coast, you simply could not recognize or understand what had happened until you literally saw it with your own eyes. I remember flying over the coast. Marcia was on the coast the day of the storm. You know, the storm came in the morning. Marcia had said Sunday night she was going to go to Hattiesburg. We had 800 National Guard General Cross pre-positioned down at Camp Shelby and had another 120 highway patrol. So she was going to go down and encourage them and thank them, and never having any idea that the storm would leave Highway 49 under this deep in debris way north of Hattiesburg. There was no way to get back to Jackson. So she and Mike Cooper, who was highway patrolman with her, they just turned around in the other direction with the convoy, which had an MDOT crew that cleaned one lane. They cleared one lane of 49 south, and it took 6 or 7 hours to go less than 60 miles. She was there from the very beginning, and when the next morning I arrived, I said, come on, go up in this helicopter with me. We're going to go take a look at everything. Marcia wouldn't go. And when I was up there, I realized why she'd already been. And she didn't want to see it again. Because it was heartbreaking and gut-wrenching. It was unimaginable. George's Bank building, 20 stories tall, more or less. The bottom 3 floors, the storm surge had washed through, even though it's blocks inland. And the roof had fallen in. Downtown Gulfport, as Ed Spraggins, the emergency operations director, said, looked like Nagasaki. And it's funny, I had not heard him say that at the time, but I told somebody in the helicopter with me that it looks like a nuclear weapon went off in the sand. And the hand of God wiped away the coast, some places for blocks, some places for miles. The storm surge crossed Interstate 10 in a number of places. Unimaginable. We have been training and preparing for the next big hurricane for years, really long before there was a Haley Barbour. And the model was Camille. Mississippi's thought there couldn't be any worse hurricane than Camille. That's a gold standard. Well, as some of the people in this room who participated in the rescue and recovery know, Katrina was so much worse than Camille, despite the fact that Camille had 200-mile-an-hour winds, spawned 200 tornadoes, but it was small. Katrina's eye was 32 miles across when it came on shore, at about the mouth of the Pearl River, a little east of the mouth of the Pearl River. And if you look at the satellite photographs that are commonly displayed in offices, you will see that the front bands of the storm are on shore in Louisiana and Mississippi, while the tail end bands are still in the Caribbean Sea. That they're south of Cuba and south of Yucatan. That was how gargantuan this storm was, and it was pushing in front of it because it had such low barometric pressure. It was pushing in front of a storm surge that was reported to us on Sunday that NOAA buoy, which they keep in the Gulf and all over the world, frankly, had measured a wave 55 feet deep, or tall, I guess it would be as a wave, but it's the highest they had ever measured on one of those buoys, right off the mouth of the Mississippi River. So when the storm surge hit Wayland, the largest unincorporated area, including the waves on top, it was 38 feet. Without the waves, still more than 30 feet. And I've always admired the story about the Wayland Police Department. 26 officers. Plan was, we're going to wait out the storm in the police headquarters. After it passes over, we'll go out and do search and rescue and secure it in. Nobody contemplated that the storm surge would be 15 feet above the roof of the police headquarters. That they all were washed out of there for hours before even the crest was met. Some of them hung in trees in the next block. Others got washed out of the town of Wayland, in which there was no habitable structure left after the storm surge went through Wayland. But at 8 o'clock Monday night, all 26 Wayland police officers were on duty. I wrote this book because in the wake of the worst natural disaster in American history, there are so many people that we can be proud of and that we owe our gratitude to. First responders like the Wayland police officers, the National Guard, the Highway Patrol, every other police and sheriff's department, the emergency technicians. When I flew over the coast that morning and saw this devastation, if you had told me that there would only be 238 fatalities, I would have called you the most optimistic, Pollyannish goofball that I ever met. In fact, Bert Case asked me when I came back to Jackson, he said, "What's your biggest worry?" And I said, "How many bodies are we going to find under all that debris?" That there were only 238 while there were 1,600 in Louisiana is a great tribute to our first responders. It really, really is. It's also a tribute to our local officials. You know, it's interesting in the mega disaster. If you are the leader, you have to lead people who don't work for you. You have to lead people who don't have to do what you tell them to do. People who don't report to you. And having been around politics almost all my life, I understand for a politician and an elected official to give up power voluntarily. Well, that's an unnatural act. Half of the elected officials on the coast and South Mississippi are Democrats. Some of you may know that I'm a Republican. But to a person, they recognize in the mega disaster somebody got to be in charge. There has to be somebody in charge. And they said, "Governor, the logical person's you. So we're going to be part of your team. And we're going to work with you. All we ask is keep your ear open to us and let us be good teammates." Which we did, and they made a huge difference in the immediate wake of the storm when it really was something that you can't imagine. But all the way through, as we planned going forward, how we were going to try to get federal assistance and state assistance, they were great. They were great partners. We had people to be grateful to from the start. But I wrote this book in addition for some people that we didn't know any of them before the storm. the 954,000 volunteers who came to Mississippi. And that number is not a pull out of the air number. 954,000 people registered with either a church or a charity in Mississippi that they came here and worked with. Unbelievably to me, 400,000 of them came after the first year. They were still coming in year 5 at the rate of 100,000 volunteers a year. Lord witness, there's no telling where we'd have been without them. And they worked hard, they worked tirelessly. And one thing that is totally unimportant, the first year, if you were a volunteer who came to Mississippi, of which there were nearly 600,000, about the only thing you did was clean up. And I'm talking about scraping out the muck. I'm talking about washing the mold after you pull off the wallboard and the siding, washing the mold off the studs so it can be built, ripping up the floor. Very, very glamorous. These people came and they worked, stayed in incredible conditions. As George said, churches were a huge part of this on both ends. Most of the volunteers came from faith-based groups. Not all of them, and I want to say we'll always be grateful to the Habitat for Humanity, the Red Cross, the AmeriCorps. I used to say the Salvation Army until the Salvation Army leader reminded me that they were a faith-based group too. So, but most came from churches of all flavors. And they came out of religious conviction. They came out of service to their God. It's interesting to see them working together because they got theological differences out the yin-yang. But they're working together for exactly the same reason. This is their religious service. And you know what's, to me, so inspiring about it is that it's fulfilling to them. The most common thing said to me by my co-author, Jerry Nash, who's sitting back here, whom I greatly appreciate, who this book would never have gotten done without him. And I am very grateful, Jerry, for that. But he's heard me tell this a million times. Of the thousands and thousands and thousands of volunteers that I saw in the 6 years after the storm, the most common thing said, and almost verbatim by all of them, was, "Governor, your people are so nice, and they're so grateful. But you know, I feel like I got more out of this for myself than the good I did for the people I came to help." What a great statement about our country, about the religious foundation of our country. And as I say, it spanned denominations. One of Marcy's favorite stories is we went to Buccaneer State Park west of Waveland, where a company called the Morrell Corporation, a Salt Lake City company, Mormon-owned, that had built most of the temporary houses of the 2002 Winter Olympics. They had called and said they wanted to use that expertise to house volunteers, and they wanted to build a big facility. Marcia was back in touch and forth with them a lot. And so they called and invited her and me to come down to the grand opening. So we drive up, and here's a tent that sleeps 700 people. I mean, it's just dark, like the size of a football field, and it's got bathrooms in it, it's got water, sewer, everything. I mean, it's like a great big dormitory of little bitty rooms. And at one end, it's just got a roof and no walls, and that's where we're having lunch. 225, 250 people, I guess, and I get out of the bar. First thing I see across the way on the other side of all these people is a big RV, a big motorhome, on the side of which, in letters about this tall, is written, "Adventists in Action." Well, excuse me, but it kind of made me laugh. You know, here we are at this Mormon deal, and the Morels would not take any money. They paid for everything, and the Church of Latter-day Saints paid, the Mormon foundation. But they had the Seventh-day Adventists that would put the deal on, so I chuckled a little bit. I got up, my time came to speak, and I said, how many of y'all are Mormons? Maybe 20, maybe 10% of the crowd. I said, how many of y'all are Seventh-day Adventists? About half a dozen, all the ones that had come there to do it. So what are the rest of y'all? Because there's none from Mississippi. They're all from somewhere else. And if anybody with any sense, which was not me, would have already figured out, these people are all Baptists, Methodists, Catholics, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Episcopalians, Pentecostals. They were all members of the denominations that we have here because that's how they got here. I'm a Methodist in Minneapolis, and my church sends me to the Methodist church in Biloxi or Ocean Springs or wherever, and they take care of me and they direct my work. So we're all these people from all these different churches, and it was very heartwarming. But then I got a really great lesson walking out. Marcia and I walked in the car. A little man walked up to me, older, and he said, "Governor, my name's Harold, and I'm from New York City." I said, "Oh, thank you for coming." He said, "My son's a rabbi." I said, "I called him last night." I said, "Son, should I come back home to New York for the high holy days?" Because it was late in October, when generally the holiest days on the Jewish calendar take place. And he said his son, the rabbi, told him, "Dad, I don't think you should come back here. I think you're closer to God where you are now." It spanned all religious views. We had Muslim kids working, building those kaboom parks, George. We had Muslim kids and Jewish kids all out working together, building stuff. It's just a great commentary of why America is the greatest country in the history of the world. And they poured that out on us. It's altogether fitting and proper that the worst natural disaster in American history would elicit the greatest outpouring of volunteerism and philanthropy in American history. And Katrina did. Really unbelievable. We'll never be able to thank the volunteers enough for what they did, but the great thing about it is they thought they didn't want to be thanked. Their fulfillment was the doing of it. Part of the book is about the legislature, their wisdom in the special session to allow the seniors to come on shore. That day I flew over the coast in a helicopter. I remember going across the mouth of Biloxi Bay where the bridge was totally gone. Nothing there but uprights. But I could see out the front of the helicopter, Eagle Shipyard, jutting out into the Gulf of Mexico. And all the way flying from the airport to Pearland to the back, on my mind had been search and rescue, security, how are we gonna make sure we save these people? For the first time, I got hit upside the head by, what are we going to do if Eagle Shipyard doesn't come back? Or Chevron, or DuPont, or Stennis, this gaming industry. Because the obliteration that they were facing had to make some people think, is this the right way to invest our money and come back? From then on, in addition to the immediate search and rescue, security, cleanup, on my mind was, what do we have to do to get people committed to return to their communities? We decided it was housing. They had that place to stay. Little did I know, 40-something thousand of them ended up staying in FEMA trailers, which are actually campers. And we had people so committed to their community that lived in the FEMA trailer, 350 square feet, with a family for 3 years. But they loved their community. They wanted to come back. But they had to have hope that there was going to be a place to stay, a job, and school for their kids to go to. And I don't know if anybody's here from the Department of Education. They were unbelievable. The local school districts and department. Every public school in Mississippi was back open before any public school in New Orleans. Every public school but one was open by October 15th, 6 weeks. And the one that wasn't open was Bay St. Louis Wayland. And they weren't open because the school buildings had been totally destroyed and their portable classrooms hadn't come yet. They opened on November the 7th. Our state employees were magnificent. You've heard Ken talk about what was done by archives and history, replicated time and time again by other state departments. Human services workers, a group of women, got rooms in a motel in Columbia and drove 90 miles each way every day for nearly a month to make sure people got food stamps, to make sure people got what they needed from state government programs that these ladies ran. And that can go on and on. Pat Cross is sitting right over here, Adjutant General of the National Guard. Early on, the federal government had a terrible hard time. FEMA's logistical system failed. And they were roundly and correctly criticized for it. But I will tell you, overall, the federal government did a whole lot more right than wrong. And we saw Monday afternoon, our guys on the ground, including the FEMA guys in Mississippi, began to suspect that FEMA's logistical system was not working. On Tuesday, that became more evident. On Wednesday, General Cross called the Pentagon, started asking us to push food in for us from the Pentagon because we weren't getting what we needed. Hack sent a bunch of helicopters out down the big highways to see if we saw any trucks that looked like they were coming to bring in food and water and ice. They didn't. So we called the Pentagon and said, after a long conversation, well, look, you need to send us food and water, or you can send us body bags. Got their attention. That night, 2 C-5As landed in the middle of the night, and over time, the military gave us 1.7 million meals out of their stocks. Meals that were there for the soldiers and the airmen and the sailors, Marines. So I tell you that story. Yeah, the federal government had some real failures, but boy, the federal government had some real successes too, like those young coasties. There's a Coast Guard station in Mobile. It's a helicopter base. Those kids, younger than my children, those kids rescued 1,900 people in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama by helicopter. And on Monday night, some of the people they rescued in the pitch black dark, there was no electricity. You had these young coasties hanging off helicopters that were flying, hanging off them on lines, on ropes, to help pull people out of trees or off of roofs. It's hard to complain about that when you're government. So the federal government, too, was a great partner, nowhere more than what Congress did for us. By God's grace, Thad Cochran was chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee in Mississippi's greatest hour of need. We developed the package. He came to the mansion, Marshall, remember, on Wednesday, 2 days after the storm, and said, y'all are going to know down here better what needs to be done than we will in Washington. So I'm looking to you. You tell me what you need, and I'll try to get it. And he and our delegation worked like nothing you ever saw. Democrats as well as Republicans. Gene Taylor and Benny Thompson worked just as hard and effectively. And we ended up getting an unprecedented special emergency disaster assistance package that literally there'd never been anything like done in American history, because this was a disaster like none in American history. How good was state economy? At the end of the day, the unprecedented package passed the Senate 93 to nothing. It wasn't just that, it wasn't just the Republicans. One day I walked into the Capitol in November, Barney Frank called me over. Barney and I will see everything Zachary son. In fact, we didn't really know each other. We'd been on a television program together one time, years before. And he called me over and I walked over. He said, "Hey, I'm told that Mississippi has an assistance package that y'all are going to give Congress." And I said, "Yes, sir. We gave it to the White House day before yesterday and the leadership last night." Barney Frank said to me, "Send me a copy. I will send it to every Democrat member of the House and ask them to vote for it." We did not lose one Democratic vote in the House. The lesson there, of course, is let people help you. When you're in your time of greatest need, don't be so proud. People want to help you, but generally they need to be told how. They need to be told what you need, and they'll go to bat for you, even if they haven't always been your ally. This is a story that's full of great stories, and I hope this book is something that you'll enjoy. I will tell you this: if the book does the story justice, it's a great book, because it's a great story. And I'll close by saying something else my mom taught me growing up. As I said, she always said that in crisis and catastrophe, they bring out the best in most people, which we saw all the time. But she used to always punctuate that with this thought. But remember, crisis doesn't create character. Crisis reveals character. The spirit and character of the people of Mississippi was there before Katrina. Katrina's tragedies brought it out. And we should never forget that. That's something that we should always want people to see. The spirit and character of the people of Mississippi, which is my opinion in response to Katrina, did more to help the image of our state than anything else that's ever happened in my lifetime. I hope y'all like it.